Hello internet people, spoiler alert for Honkai Star Rail and speculation about upcoming updates. Enjoy! I analyze things weirdly. I have this space in my head, okay? It's like a huge, dim room as big as a warehouse, and in the room there's information. Faces, pictures, locations, snippets of phrases, all suspended in the air like holograms, connected to each other with glowing threads. If I pick up one of these fragments and study it, I can see all the connections clearly, but that's not theorizing. Sure, I read 90% of the lore and obsessively catalog it, make charts, write scripts, make videos, but the act of theorizing is so much more innate than that. It just sort of happens. One moment I'm casually enjoying looking over information, just, tracing the threads in my head, not even really thinking about it. And the next, it's like strumming a guitar. The web lights up and I can feel how a dozen different pieces of information connect and vibrate in tune and harmonize with each other. It's like I have nerve endings in the web. This is what theorizing is for me. 90% of the time, when you see a theory on my channel, the entire concept and main points came into being in the span of about 30 seconds. Making videos is just giving it a form that others can see and appreciate for themselves. So of course that's why it took 2 months for me to write this one out. Time for a 3-part series, baby! But in all seriousness, that is actually the reason, because this video isn't a result of a lightning bolt moment. Although I did come across a couple really good lightning bolt moments while I was studying. This time I actually challenged myself to dig deeper into my own assumptions about some of the mechanics behind the world of Star Rail, looking at the connections in the web itself instead of just at the information being connected. And I'm also laying the groundwork for the next 2 videos because in order to understand the different eons and how they relate to each other, which are parts 2 and 3, you first need to understand the paths on a much deeper level than I've talked about them before, if that's even possible. I'm not trying too hard to convince anyone today. I kinda just want to talk about it and see what you think in the comments. Without leaks, please, especially right now, Hoyo is filing lawsuits. So with that out of the way, let's get into part 1 of the past and future of the path system. If this video were the history of the entire world, I guess this would be the section at the beginning of the video where we talk not about history, but about science, physics, math, and chemistry. We're not talking about the origins of the Star Rail universe yet, we're just talking about the origins of the path system. I have spent so much time going over what the paths are, what they mean, and what they have in common with each other, but letting go of my precious philosophies for 2 seconds, the better question would be things like, what are they made of? What is their relationship to the eons? Do the events of the cosmos affect the paths in the same way the paths affect the cosmos? Well, before answering, I need to semantically nitpick myself a bit. One thing I've repeated over and over and over in the past is that paths are philosophies, but I may have been a little bit careless with my choice of words. In my defense, in most situations, they're so intertwined that there's no need to think of them as separate, but since we're in hair-splitting university, welcome to class, we're gonna talk about it, cause there is a difference. The word path is not synonymous with the word philosophy, like I've implied in the past. In real life as well as in-game, a philosophy is a system of thinking that tries to explain the meaning behind how we experience the world, and answer common questions about life. And yes, there is a philosophy attached to each path, but the paths themselves are, well, they're called paths for a reason, but I prefer to think of them as channels or rivers of energy. Path energy and path philosophy are very connected, but strictly speaking, they're not the same. My best guess for why specific philosophies get attached to specific energy channels is, just like in real life, these channels or rivers almost have personalities. Some are shallow and wide, some are narrow and deep, choppy and fast-flowing, slow and calm, you get it. And these characteristics make each path easier or more difficult for people with certain mindsets and characteristics to attach and draw energy from them. As for where that energy for the paths themselves comes from, I have a theory. But let's get one thing out of the way first. I don't for one moment believe they came from Nous. At least not in the way that's been implied. Xandar tries to say that he is the one who first invented the concept of paths. And I am here to tell you, as someone who studies this game, no. On a timeline, it is quite simply impossible. There are at the very least 6 paths that already existed and had path striders before Xandar created our computerized overlord. I'll go into more detail about that in the next video. Thematically, it does not match with everything we've seen about the concept of erudition. My best guess is that Xandar invented paths in the same way that Isaac Newton invented gravity. Were people floating off into space before the apple fell on old Newt's head? No, but he was the first one to give it a name and study it. Now I could get get on board with Nous helping to shape the paths into what they are today, but not directly. There is a theory floating around that Ligus alludes to, that the Genius Society themselves are somehow under Nous's direct control, and Nous, for lack of a better word, manipulates them into doing specific things as a way to weaponize the butterfly effect to bring about the creation of some of the paths. That kinda also gives me a thematic ick, cause it starts to deviate away from the concept of erudition and into the concept of finality. There is a good possibility that Xandar is the first emanator that ever emanated, but if he's trying to claim any more credit over the path system than that, he is even more of a delusional megalomaniac than I gave him credit for. Ligus and his cave can go suck an egg. The only other place we see Nous being painted as the supreme orchestrator of the universe, it's much more complicated than that. When Herta is going over the data of the simulated Nous in Sim-U, she says, "Every step we took were within the simulated Nous's calculations, as if they were the architect of the simulated universe and we were data instead." First off, you guys know how I feel about the simulated universe's reliability. But second off, I think we might be ignoring how similar prediction and causality can look. See, here's the thing about Nous. You guys know the scepters. They're these containment fields created by Rupert II, and Amphorius is inside one. They work by setting up a scenario with a specific set of variables, then watching the scenario play out, and if it doesn't proceed the way they want, they tweak a few things and run it again, and again, and again, and again, and again, over and over and over. We saw this in 3.4. They're basically just infinite possibility generators. Fun fact, they are also, according to As I've Written, Nous's neurons. Nous's brain is made of millions of these, all running simultaneously to find the answer to any question anyone could possibly ask, and extrapolating out infinite possible futures and realities to find the one that's most likely. Did I, or did I not, say erudition was the path of possibility? It's almost exactly like the simulated universe in a way. Except that while Nous's expressed goal is to extrapolate forward to find the most likely future, the Sim-U's goal is to extrapolate backwards to find the most likely past. And it has considerably less processing power. Herta actually does concede that the Sim-U isn't perfect, but it still gets most of the broad strokes about cosmic conflicts and even details about planetary events mostly correct. Imagine how much closer to actual reality Nous gets with millions of scepters all operating at the same time to find answers. Someone who doesn't have Nous's perspective, even someone like Herta, if they see those crazy predictions coming true again and again and again enough times, it's not entirely unreasonable to start questioning whether the chicken or the egg came first. Honestly, to me, this whole discussion feels weird. It's like, can free will exist in a universe with a god that already knows how everything is going to turn out in the end? And there's Terminus again. I'm starting to think there is a closer connection between Terminus and Nous than we first thought. But to me, the most interesting thing about Herta's statement regarding the simulated universe has nothing to do with who controls what on a universal level. It's that Sim-Nous seems to have access to the wider Sim-U data. I still believe they're not manipulating it, just watching and predicting, but it does start to beg the question, where is Nous getting their data? The simulated universe has been fed a truckload of information about the world to cipher out its conclusions. Everything from privileged information Herta obtained via alliances and public records to probably even scientific data gathered at the space station. A lot of it is incomplete or flawed or outright wrong if our own databank is anything to go by, but it's enough for the Sim-U to make halfway decent predictions, or postdictions, and it appears that simulated Nous is able to peek into those calculations as they're happening. But then the question is, where is real Nous getting their information? What are they peeking in on? Well, this is something we're told fairly directly. Nous is analyzing the imaginary energy around them and calculating their predictions based on that. Next question, what is imaginary energy? Disclaimer to the Honkai Impact 3rd fans, I know some of you are going to hate this, but bear with me, I'm going to expand on this theory in just a few minutes. Imagine you're looking up at the stars at night. While you're trying to trace out constellations and pondering the reason for naming a galaxy after milk, there are photons that have traveled millions and millions of light years from those stars to your eyes. Those photons are all over the entire space between the stars and you, but space still appears dark. We don't see the light itself unless it hits something and illuminates it. Light itself is invisible, but if we could make it visible, the entire universe would be full of it. That's sort of what imaginary energy is, this latent, invisible energy that's everywhere. It's a non-visible spectrum of light. It flows through the entire Honkaiverse. It surrounds us, penetrates us, it binds the galaxy together. And this, by the way, is what we're referencing with the imaginary tree, Hoyo versus Yggdrasil. It's not a real tree, or maybe it is, the in-universe jury is still out, but it is a visual representation of how imaginary energy flows through the multiverse, branching off to create new universes, each leaf forming a new world. And this includes the world worlds we visit in Star Rail. So back to what we were originally talking about. What Nous is doing as an Eon is taking imaginary energy, which again is basically data from the multiversal tree, and then analyzing it, understanding it, and using it to predict the future. When you look at it this way, Nous is barely even predicting, they're just observing. It makes me wonder what question they're trying to answer right now. Maybe, just like their followers, they're searching for a possible route forward that is different than the choices given to them. Which makes me think maybe Nous will be the one to give us our way out of the impossible situation on Amphorius. Again, Terminus keeps showing up. Now, before we move forward, I'm going to back up for a moment and acknowledgize a thing. The fact is, in other circumstances, I might have taken what Xandar said and what Herta said and probably said, hey look, two almost completely unrelated people who came to the same conclusion using different equations? That sounds like proof to me. I have done this in the past. This is straight up one of the formulas I use to try and sort through fictionologists' bunk to what actually happened in Star Rail's history, and yet in this situation, I have taken two perfectly good pieces of evidence and thrown them out. And I will be completely honest, I don't like doing this, but there is a reason. The thing is, there actually is a lot of evidence for a supreme puppet master of the path system. It's just not Nous. Unless Hoyo has done some kind of retcon here, Nous and Xandar are kinda taking credit for something that's just happening further upstream from them. And I'll be very clear, I don't think they've retconned this. This concept is too incredible and too deeply rooted in their lore to discard. Let's back up to our initial question, shall we? What are the paths made of, and where did they come from? Well, I sneakily told you the first answer. The paths, all of them, are made of imaginary energy from the imaginary tree. Path energy is what Nous is analyzing. But what turns this giant flood of imaginary energy that's flowing through the entire universe into paths with distinct characteristics? Well, as we said, the simplest way to think of imaginary energy is light, right? And what do you get when you break, or should I say, refract light? You get a rainbow. This is where it gets interesting, because one of the concepts associated with the Star Rail universe as a whole is the crystal chalice. We only actually hear it mentioned once, but it's referenced at least two other places. The mention is in the opening line of the first Fable of the Stars. I dreamed of a ray of light, of a crystal chalice. The light that shone from that crystal spoke to me. Listen to the parable of the stars. In Black Swan's dream, a ray of light shone through a crystal, therefore becoming a rainbow, and that rainbow told her the parable of the stars, which she tells to us in that video, a video which is all about the paths. And why did it take me this long to realize that the paths are a literal rainbow? Oh my gosh. Can I call this confirmed? Like, as a treat. But the second place we see the crystal chalice is even more interesting. Remember in my reaction to Evernight's Myriad Celestia last month, I kept pointing out the rainbows scattered around her because they're so pretty. But here's the thing, Hoyoverse put them there for a reason, because one path above the others is actually associated with rainbows. It's remembrance. Fuli is described in more than a few places as casting rainbows around them wherever they go. And we even get to see it for ourselves in their splash art and the Eon Gaze thing from when we got Remembrance as a playable path. And the reason for this is Fuli is actually made of crystal. And if you look closely at Fuli's splash art, do you see the shape that's being created here? This is the traditional shape of a chalice, meaning that the crystal chalice that the light is shining through to create the paths could be Fuli theirself, which would mean that Fuli is the one who created the paths by manipulating the energy of the universe. This makes a lot of sense for the reasons above, and would also explain why the path of remembrance, when we see it used in combat, seems to mimic the other paths. It's not mimicking, it is the source, the thing being mimicked, even while somehow still remaining its own path. It also explains something that puzzled me for a while. Do you remember how Fuli was given such a prominent role there at the very end of that same Fables About the Stars? Like in a big long video about the paths, why highlight this one? Why is this the one they chose to give the epic music swell to and literally use as the background for our Chariot of the Gods Astral Express? But this makes sense. In all areas, gameplay, lore depiction, and general fitting into the system, it makes sense. Finally. But there's one last thing we need to touch on here, because this is wild. So Fuli is made of crystal, but it's not just any crystal. There's one type of crystal that Fuli is associated with more than any other, and it's ice crystals. But it's not water ice. It's crystallized memoria. You know these purple nodes that we interact with on Oneiros, and when it opens up we see people looking all crystalline? Yeah, it's the same thing. In Star Rail, important events sometimes leave energy traces behind in the area they happened as a sort of vapor called memoria. When those traces come together into something more substantial, like condensation on the side of a glass, that's what we call a memory bubble. And we see those a lot in Penacony. You can enter them like a dream and look around. But on Oneiros, those memories manifest in real life when the memoria vapor freezes and it looks like this. But it's pretty much the exact same thing. What I'm getting at is Fuli is made of crystallized memoria too, which means Fuli isn't real. The game simultaneously claims Fuli is alive, Fuli is dead, Fuli got shattered. This is my contribution to that discussion. They are a memory, just like we were when we died on Oneiros and we're still walking around. So the next logical question is, whose memory? What memory could be so powerful that the memoria itself ascended to eonhood? Well, the most obvious answer is Mythos, which Lality's lore went into detail about. And it does make sense considering how much misinformation exists around Fuli. Another possibility, which I've warmed up to a little bit unexpectedly over the course of making this video, is that they are Terminus's memories. If Terminus dies at the beginning of time, then these are the memories they left behind that will somehow become real again at the end. But I have another couple good possibilities for you. One I'm saving for part 3 of this series because it requires a lot of explanation but is really cool. The other is maybe, just maybe, the memory belongs to Aha. Hear me out. The masked fools, as I've talked about before, have this way of biding their time and just watching things play out until they intervene and change everything all at once. Every single fool does this. I've been asking myself for a while now if Aha's followers are known for completely changing the playing field in a moment, then because Pathstriders tend to reflect their eon, what did Aha do to change everything? I don't have like a timeline on this or a clear how and why yet, but I can point to similarities between Aha and Fuli. For one, they look alike. You're probably staring at your screen like, huh, right now. But just look, Aha, if you haven't noticed, isn't the masks. They're standing behind the masks. See? Dude with their hands clasped and a circle on their chest. Now look at Fuli. There's the circle. Also, remember I said there's a third reference to the crystal chalice besides Fuli and the fables about the stars? Yeah, it's in the elation symbol. I've been saying for a year now, the fools have a more complete view of the universe than anyone else. But what I think is the most important connection between the two is Fuli is a collector of memories. Think about all the memo keepers we've met so far. They all have their specific method of preserving memories. Black Swan has her deck of cards. March and Mr. Rekka have cameras. Evernight has a scrapbook. Maybe it's possible to contain memories in other things like music or recipes or contracts or graffiti. But Aha is a master of stories. And what better way to preserve memory than with a story? I don't know. To me, this one just fits. The idea of the crystal chalice, Aha's notorious cup of laughter that represents hedonism being poured out, and it's just the paths inside, feels right somehow. The way Remembrance works gameplay-wise, taking on the attributes of other paths could be described as masking, something very attached to Aha. It even explains the odd stories we get about Aha, how they travel from place to place just learning about people. They've spent time on Herta Space Station, with the armed archaeologist, with the Nameless on Penacony. They go wherever they can just to take part in good stories, to gather information about how people experience the world. And those memories are valuable. I feel like this makes sense for them. Although with a master of stories, you never can be too sure, can you? And this is where I have to end the video if I don't want it to go on for another 12 pages. Don't worry, I will be doing part 2 next month where I talk about how the eons and paths have evolved over time and how I expect this to go in the future. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you do, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm super excited to talk more about the eons. It's just a lot to do all at once. I do plan on releasing more shorts, by the way, though, so be on the lookout for those. In the meantime, thank you so much to my channel members this month. You all are so awesome, and don't forget, I will be streaming the new update, the Oneiros finale, on Thursday the 6th. Turn on notifications if you want to be notified for that. I'm doing a big push to try and reach 50,000 followers by the end of the year, so be sure to share this around if you want to help with that too. I'll talk to you all very, very soon, and until then, all of you, stay safe and stay kind.